This is the meeting of the Leon County School Board. We're calling it to order on April 8th at the Aquilina Howell Building. And we are going to begin with our Pledge of Allegiance, introduced by our student school board member. Ashley, take it away.
Today, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, we have Shubham Dixit, who is an 8th grader at Fairview Middle School. Some hobbies include swimming, playing cricket, and traveling. So, Shubham?
Cricket. Everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
And joining us for the thought for the day is Zamari Lewis, who is an 8th grade IB prep middle schooler at Fairview Middle School. She's accompanied by her mom, Demetrius Lewis. Some school activities include yearbook club, Spanish club, student government, volleyball. She is in some awesome honors classes, and she says that when she grows up, she wants to own her own law firm and be a lawyer.
I can accept failure. Everyone fails at something, but I can't accept not trying. That's by Michael Jordan. It's okay to fail if you try. If you don't try, then you will never know whether you could have been successful or failed. You have a 50-50 chance of being successful, but it's about whether you choose to take it or not. If you do fail, then you can learn from your mistakes and keep trying until you succeed. Nobody is perfect. We all make mistakes, but it's about how we push through those mistakes and continue to grow and learn from them. As I continue to grow in life, I will always try, and if I succeed, I will keep going. But if I fail, I will learn from my mistakes and continue to try until I am successful.
Amen. Beautiful.
There was an article in the newspaper today on the universities about the benefit of failing sometimes. And a lot of kids who go to university have never failed before, and there's a lot you can learn by failing. So thank you for that thought for the day. It was very thoughtful. And we'd like to recognize any parents or family that are in the audience. Could they stand that supported these young people and gotten where they are today? So any family members, please stand.
Oh, thank you.
Also have faculty and the principal of Fairview Middle School, Scott Hansen, with faculty, and Mr. Hansen, please stand and be recognized. It looks like the Fairview Math Explorers are here to support their fellow students, which is great. Now we're going to have changes and additions. Ms. Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The superintendent is recommending the approval of changes and additions for tonight's agenda as follows. Adding item 19.04, a settlement agreement between John Owens Ponds and the Leon County School Board and Rocky Hanna. Adding item 19.05, Leon County School Board versus Baycrest et al. Item number 18.07, a stipulated agreement for alternative placement, pulled case number LCS 2019-33 and pulled case number LCS 2019-34. Replace documentation to reflect these changes. Adding item 19.06, approval to advertise, amendment to policy 4600, classification specifications, school-based administrator. Item 19.06, approval to advertise, amendment to policy 4600, classification specifications, school-based administrator. Pulled.
Madam Chair, I move the approval changes and additions is read.
Second. Okay. Second. First by Ms. Bowen, second by Ms. Striplin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Next, we have the superintendent spotlight. I hope it's going to explain why we have peanut butter jars in front of our faces on the dais tonight.
Don't have a spotlight, but we can talk about the peanut butter.
Please
blocking your face. No,
please do.
I need it blocking as much of me as possible. But so we have peanut butter and jelly up on the dais this evening as representing our kickoff for our third annual peanut butter and jelly drive that Julie Montanero and WCTV have partnered with Second Harvest Food Bank and also our local Publixes in Tallahassee and Leon County to collect peanut butter and jelly over the next 2 weeks. We've asked each school to collect as many jars, plastic only, please, as they can. I think the first year we were at about 3 tons. Last year we were at 8 tons. So we'll see what our students from throughout the district can do this year. And what was really heartwarming was some of the schools who really should be the benefactors of these peanut butter and jelly during the summer. With those kids were the ones that gave the most. So it really touches your heart. But I've said for many years that what we do in the classroom and on the athletic field and in the arts is important, but to learn at a very young age to give back to help others in need that are less fortunate, that lesson is invaluable and may be the greatest lesson we ever teach our children. So the challenge has been set to exceed the 8 tons. We'll see. I'm looking down there at Ashley, what Leon can do, and Lincoln and Fairview, and you know, you'd be very proud of our kids. They're givers. So we're excited. There's peanut butter and jelly drive. And then Julia had her own song, peanut butter and jelly and jelly.
Okay, that's
and
enough
jelly.
for your spotlight tonight. Thank you so much.
Moving right along.
I meant to cut right before that.
Too much sugar.
All right, we do have a recognition tonight. You see the young folks in front of us with the red shirts. We always love to brag about our school district and recognize state champions. So at this time, I'm going to ask the proud principal of Fairview Middle School, Land of the Falcons, to come forward and introduce our special guest, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you for having us, School Board Superintendent. We had a state championship. We also won the Big Bend region, which culminated a couple months ago. So our Mathcounts team, if you've ever seen them or participated in one, Mathcounts comes down to a test, and then later on it comes down to a countdown round where they put up the questions on the board, and basically you have to answer. I'm still reading them, and they're buzzing in, so that's how fast they do it. It's unbelievable when you watch them. So we have the state championship team. We also have the state championship coach that will be coaching them in May when they go for the state. The national competition will be held in Orlando, and I'd like to have Dr. Curry come up and introduce the group.
Wow, you're already the state champions. That's amazing.
This is the 8th time that Fairview has won the state championship.
Wow.
Good evening, Superintendent Hannah and the school board members. Thank you for having us this evening. So last year we came here as the Big Bend chapter champions. This year also we are the same as Mr. Hanson said. In addition to that, I'm so proud to say that we are the state champions also. So my students...
Yeah, we can clap. There you go.
So my students are our students are very passionate about math. So this is a result of their tremendous hard work. And I'm very proud to introduce our team members. So students, please stand up. You can come to the front. Line up there, please. Okay, so students, please raise your hand when I call your name. So the team members are Karthik Vedula, Eric Singh, Tanmay Haldia, Ananya Mundradi, and our team alternate is Vanisha Sinha. So this, the same team, they won also the ciphering round title. So we are the champions for ciphering round also. Now the state Mathcounts also recognize the top 15 individuals, and Fairview is so proud to say that 3 out of those 15 students were Fairview students, and we were the only school to have 3 students placed in the top 15. Individual winners are Karthik Vedula, 2nd place, Eric Singh, 10th place, and Shubham Dixit, 13th place. Top 4 individuals will be representing the Florida team in the nationals, and we are proud to say that our student Karthik Vedula, he is one among that 4 students. Last year also he represented Florida for the nationals. This year also he's doing that. So that's all.
You're the coach.
Yes, I am the coach, so I will be leading the Florida team for the nationals.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Quick picture? We usually do that. Sure. Y'all come on up stage, we'll take a picture.
Yes.
How many 8th graders? Who's 8th grade? All 1. All right. son. To the bald-headed guy in the middle. How about that?
I promise you were the most fun part of our meeting. And we hate to see you go, but we also understand that you're very studious students. And so if you need to go home and get your homework done, you won't be rude if you leave. So thank you so much for coming. Our next item is reports to be heard. And we are going to have the Title I Advisory Council give us an update for the viewing public. We had a hour-and-a-half workshop with just the Title I recommendations earlier today, and they gave us so many excellent recommendations. We're very excited about implementing them. Very important committee that meets once a month, year-round, and they are really taking their job seriously with all volunteers. And so we're just really happy to hear just this. You're just going to hear the summary, but I believe the full report will be put online on the district website.
Yes, that's the plan. So we'll just try to whet your appetite with the summary.
Okay.
So the Title I Advisory Council was scheduled today to present to the school board, and we did that during the workshop before tonight's meeting. And the TAC is a representative body with representation from all the Title I schools, as well as community members, school board representatives, principals, teachers, parents. And we focused on these following priorities: attracting and retaining experienced teachers in Title I schools. I should preface by saying that our report to the school board was not one-sided. We had an engaging discussion with the school board and got feedback immediately because of how focused our school board and superintendent have been on Title I school challenges over the last even few years. So we did focus on how to get the best teachers in our Title I schools, not to the detriment of non-Title I schools, but just making sure that we don't have vacancies in our Title I schools. We also looked at providing targeted and comprehensive access to quality pre-K programs in recognition of the importance of investing in the earliest years. We talked about increasing parent and community involvement in Title I schools, how to bring our meetings, not just the TAC meetings, but also meetings at the district level and at the school level to the parents, and making sure that it's possible for them to be involved in all of our parent institutions like PTO and School Advisory Council. And actually, how can those PTOs and School Advisory Councils glean from the successes of other schools when we fall on harder times? And fostering the cooperation between Title I schools, so not just around parent organizations, but also in terms of making sure that our feeder patterns are well connected and that our students move more seamlessly between schools, whether it's laterally when they have to change schools because they've moved, or vertically when they go from elementary to middle and middle to high. And finally, how to protect the support that we find and give teachers when their schools are struggling in the accountability system, how to make sure that we can sustain that support to make sure that after a school can raise their school grade, they don't lose that support and fall back into the grade that they were when they needed the support, because outside of the school we're not necessarily improving the situation that the students are in, and so the support that the school is receiving is necessary on an ongoing basis and not just in that year where they had a failing or less than good grade. We were really, I just want to thank you right now for having heard us today, and we look forward to our next conversation. We have a meeting. Our next meeting is in May. We were supposed to have a meeting tonight. This is usually when we meet, the second Monday, but we canceled it because our a large number of us was here tonight. And we're meeting again in May, and we're going to elect our executive for the next school year in May. And we look forward to ongoing conversations with the school board and the district to make sure that the TAC is both supporting your priorities and also bringing to your attention the priorities that need to be kept in the light. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your earlier report as well. We have persons to be heard.
Yes, Madam Chair. First speaker is going to be Marie Claire Lehman. Just as you sat down.
Oh, we missed you.
It's time to come back up. Give us your name, address. You'll have 3 minutes.
Marie Claire Lehman, 1911 Walhalla Court, Tallahassee 32301. I didn't realize that this was a consent agenda item, but I wanted to speak and maybe perhaps ask a few questions about the amendment to the Title I grant. As I understand it, when roll forward money is certified by the DOE, the school district then has to spend it, and the budget of how that money will be spent was attached to your school board meeting information agenda. And I feel like, especially in light of the recommendations that you just heard, I wish we could come up with a more meaningful way to spend the roll forward, because although I understand that you're limited in time to decide how to spend it, extremely rushed, limited in time to when you can spend it, because you receive the certification in March and it has to be spent, I presume, by the end of the budget year, and that you don't have assurances of what that money is going to be. Nevertheless, if we could think of ways to put that money into some of these priorities rather than treat it with all due respect, I really don't mean this in a mean way, but as found money that we just have to kind of spend, I feel like we could do really meaningful things with that money. There are ways that you are spending it in meaningful ways, like the tutoring of summer programs, paying teachers and tutors for summer programs. That's a great way to spend it. But when it comes to professional development, although professional development is very valuable, we don't have enough time to really look at what the schools are doing and where they need the professional development. If they're implementing a program at a school specific, a district-wide professional development might not help them implement that program at the school level. And so I wonder if we're really choosing the best way to use that money. And then I understand, and this is where my question comes in, I understand that at the beginning of the year, we had indirect costs that we could, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that, as I remember, that we couldn't cover with the Title I funds and do everything else that we wanted to do with the Title I funds, the Title I grant. And so, as I remember, the district had sort of absorbed the 7.28% indirect costs, and I see now that in this amended budget, we're using the roll forward to now retroactively, I guess, pay the indirect funds, but I don't really know what's going on there, and I was, understandably curious from the Title I Advisory Council perspective, although I'm not representing the TAC in this particular moment because I didn't have a chance to even bring it up in a meeting. But I would just like to really understand how that money flows from one bucket to another, and if it was necessary to reimburse that original bucket where it was borrowed from, what did we not spend then? And anyway, do you see I'm confused? So thank you.
Thank you.
Can we get answers to her questions, to some of them?
Yeah, Jillian, you want to come forward and give an overview? And we had a long meeting with our new CFO, Kim Banks, to discuss moving forward a way of work. Some of them, as Marie Claire mentioned, was problematic on the behalf of Department of Education because we get these notifications so late and then trying to get organized. But I can assure you, Marie Claire, because there has to be a better way of work, notwithstanding the timelines were put on by the department. So, Ms. Gregory, if you could address maybe a couple of her issues.
Sure. So good evening again. The roll forward dollars that come to us as a function of an identification of a project through the Department of Education. And those dollars come to us and have to be spent in certain ways that align with our Title I plan. So for example, if we have identified $1,000 for differentiated pay in our original Title I plan, with the roll forward dollars, unless we submitted an amendment to the State Department of Education, which is a very long process and they don't have to approve it, to change that amount, we can't really use the money to do those kinds of differentiated pay kinds of things, right? And so the idea is, so if we get $1 million and we base all of the salary for the differentiated pay or any number of programs, professional development, on $1 million, and then the state gives us $250,000 more, we can't spend above what we originally put in those in the original part of the Title I plan without the state approving it. And that approval process, from lessons learned last year, takes a very long time, and is often there are parts that are denied. And then those parts that are denied, you lose that money. So this year, what we've done for the 18-19 school year is we took our roll forward dollars, and then we looked at where we could plug in to align with a submitted plan and supplement those dollars. So for example, professional development for teachers. We have dollars set aside for professional development. We're able to enhance them. The purpose of the professional development that we are putting together, the Title I conference this summer, is not specifically program-oriented. It's more about motivation and big picture items. So people like Ron Clark, do you know Ron Clark? He will be part of the teacher professional development plan. So rather than saying, this is a program on ABC, we're going to bring in somebody who can say, teaching all children matters. Making sure that you as a teacher understand the big picture matters. And so the purpose of the Title I conference is to fill the teachers' buckets with people who are nationally recognized experts in educating children of poverty. And so...
Are you Ron Clark?
Yes, sir. We're very excited.
You're invited, right?
Yes, of course. What we are doing as part of that professional development is we are paying our teachers who are Title I teachers to participate. We are honoring their time and their commitment to bettering themselves. So again, rather than being professional development on iReady, certainly that has value, we are actually doing something somewhat different, right? Somebody who's more of a motivational speaker, someone who's coming in to fill the buckets of the teachers to help them maybe take a moment, take a breath, and refresh. So that's the professional development piece. We would not be spending money in that if we didn't have the roll forward, because we would be pushing the schools to say, do the iReady professional development. However, we are not able to do that at this point based on the rules. We have talked about, would be appropriate for us to take the bulk of the money, divide it up, and create some sort of differentiated pay structure. And that is not part of our original Title I plan for the 2018-19 school year. So we were not able to do that without submitting an amendment that may or may not have been approved. And if it was not approved, we would have lost the money. And so that was problematic. The reimbursement on the costs had to do with paying for those indirect costs to free up dollars out of general revenue to provide for opportunities for the superintendent to expend in other areas that were negotiated.
One thing you might want to add, and the other piece, I can tell you this because we had a meeting the other day with all of our grant holders, and we have like 40 of these programs. We have Title I, Title II,
3, 4, 9.
Title III, Title IV, IDEA, is to maximize our resources and do a better job of planning on the front end, Marie Claire, so we don't have roll forward. That's the goal. That's what I've challenged our folks to do. And there's really been lack of communication between the finance office and the grant holders. It was almost like that this group did their thing with that really big part of money, the $324 million, and then there were the grant holders who kind of operated in silos. And so there's going to be a much better job of coordinated efforts with Title I so we don't have the roll forward to begin with, which is the other piece that you mentioned. You saw where you had governor's charter at like 17%. It was a miss. They missed the deadline altogether to apply to receive any funding. So we had a decision to make, and we chose. You want to talk about that?
Sure. So governor's charter did not meet a data deadline that was imposed by the state, and the decision point really was whether we supported the Title I students at Governor's. And the truth of the matter is, because of the students at Governor's go back and forth between our schools so much, and all of those students matriculate to one of our high schools, while I recognize that somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do in the service of our students, the superintendent went out on a limb and supplemented their dollars so that those students would get those services that they would not otherwise have qualified for because an adult didn't make a state imposed deadline. And again, the discussion that the superintendent that he made was what is in the best interest of our students, knowing that the students they go back and forth between 2 or 3 middle schools during the course of the year, and then they all of them.
And even if and that's true, but even if they didn't, they're still our kids. You know, there's kids in our community in Leon County, and but I can assure you, Marie Claire, we have the same goal. I mean, whether it's with this pot or the IDEA pot, is to maximizing these resources to its full potential. Heaven forbid we send a penny back; that'll really upset me. But it's to drive this roll forward number down, so we're not faced with this problem every March of having this money. And oh, by the way, we have to hurry up and figure out a plan. From what I understand from Jillian, to make to these amendment changes, it doesn't happen overnight, and it's somewhat cumbersome. So how can we kind of outsmart the game on the front end? That's the challenge.
Okay, Ms. Rasmussen?
I appreciate everything you just said, and I'm excited about your summer programming and all of that. And so what I'm about to say is no reflection on the quality of the work and your expenditure plan. But what I am perplexed about is that we've just had this committee who's been working tirelessly to make an hour-and-a-half presentation with some substantive recommendations, and that the chair of that committee is caught off guard by this, and how we might be able to improve moving forward to at least, if you can't keep the entire committee apprised of what's happening in Title I world, to at least make sure that the chairman is involved. And I only say that from a place of those of you in the room who will remember where we came from before we had a Title I Advisory Council, when there was a strong perception that there were some abuses happening with those dollars here at the district. And things have changed dramatically since then, but I don't want us to ever step back.
And it's my apology. My understanding is from staff that there was some outreach that was conducted.
Excuse me.
So I'll follow up with my staff.
Right, not trying to get anybody in trouble, just moving forward. How can we do better?
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Okay.
Before we close on Marie Claire, though, I messed up. But Marie Claire has been recognized from the Department of Education as the Region 1 Adult Volunteer of the Year. So congratulations.
Most deserving.
Most deserving.
Outstanding. Congratulations. Yes.
One more speaker.
Yes, Scott Mazer. Please give us your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes. And you got a prop. How wonderful.
And a prop holder.
Scott Mazer, 3319 Dartmoor Drive. Madam Chair, school board member, superintendent. Last time I was here, we talked about how I was thankful for showing up at committee meetings, speaking up for the funding for public education, and lo and behold, the next week there was an opportunity. So what I'm bringing to you right now is an opportunity to participate in a petition that's going on statewide asking for increased funding. We're looking for a 10% increase in per student allocation. It'd be about $740 plus. That would then equate to something that you could do for folks here locally. And I think the important part is, what does that translate to? A recent article from Arkansas talked about the benefit of field trips and what that does to empathy and tolerance and student critical thinking. And so when I think of what increased funding could mean, it could mean more opportunities for our students. We want to know what matters to you. We want to ask you to participate with us, to get your picture taken in front of the frame, and go ahead and post out there #FundOurFuture. And hopefully on April 17th, we're asking you to support us in a walk-in at all of our school sites, so that we would meet 10 to 15 minutes before the school day starts. We'd wear red. We would go ahead and take pictures. We would provide a number of these frames for folks and make sure that we make a point to let our community know what it means to them in terms of increased funding. It's not what it means to me. It's what do they want to see in their schools. And so I think that's the part that we're looking for, and we're asking for your support.
And I wasn't quite sure what on April 17th, can you explain that again, and what role would you
So
like us
April
to play?
17th, reach out to all the leadership within the district and ask them to participate in the walk-in to whatever capacity, because every school is unique, and so what they're able to do, to make sure that work with parent-teacher organizations about making sure parents understand why we're doing the walk-ins. And then as to the point that we would do, we would involve the staff, not just teachers, but support staff, principals, and custodians, bus drivers, everybody.
And does the walk-in mean you want people to take pictures?
Take pictures. We'll have these out there. We're calling it the Apple Challenge. You can get a large apple and a small apple, and, well, current funding is the small apple, of course, and we want a big apple. So the idea is just to make sure that we get it out there, promote the petition, because, as you know, legislators often say, well, we didn't hear about that, and we want to make sure that we let our voice be heard.
Is the district preparing any type of response or participation in this activity?
That's the first I've heard of it. So, no, sir. I mean, we got to be a little careful of how we go about promoting. Well, I mean, we're all on the same team. We're on the same. So we'll do whatever we can to help the LCTA get the word out about this event.
At the end, if we're asking you to publicly go ahead and sign the petition as well, if you're so inclined. So, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott.
At the end of the meeting?
Yeah, he stays to the end. Usually. Okay.
Where are we?
We are at
Consent.
items of consent. Do I have a motion?
I move for consent.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Jones, seconded by Ms. Bowen. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We now move down to 19. 1901. Mr. Albritton.
Good evening, Board, Chair, Superintendent.
Good evening.
1901 is the annual fish verification. For those that don't know what fish is this little 5-digit number. That number is an inventory at DOE that tells you when that room was built, the square footage of it, the condition the room's in, the finishes inside of it. And annually, we come to the board with this recommendation to verify the fish. Facilities and construction to verify what has been added, taken away, and this goes to DOE every year.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. 1902.
1902 is Superintendent's recommendation to the board to approve Hoist Ark Architects Amendment 1 to professional services for their contract at Rickards High School, Phase 3, demolition of existing building 7-8 site work. The amount is $33,566.40.
Move approval.
Moved by Mr. Jones, second by Ms. Bowen. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It passes. Next is 1903, Mutual Link. Mr. Hunkiar, who gave us a very thorough presentation today, but
Yes, he did.
for the public's purposes, this is a really exciting and new app we're going to hear about, so for safety. So let's hear about it.
All right, good evening, board members, Mr. Superintendent. Once again, we are proposing approval of the Mutual Link and Rave Panic app implementation project. This will put a panic button application in the hands of every district employee and represent all of our schools as well as our support sites. In the event of an emergency, everything from a 911 to a medical emergency, fire, or God forbid, a active shooter event, when the person holds down that button, it immediately notifies our local first responders and ties in existing communications. So phones are able to talk to radios, and they're also able to pull in our video from our school. And what this will do is provide a quicker response in the event of an emergency.
I think a lot of us are very excited about this. One more step to make sure our students are safe. Are there any questions or discussion?
None here. Move approval.
I would.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Triplin, second by Ms. Bowen. Any discussion? Ms. Rasmussen, did you want to say
I
something?
was just going to suggest there seemed to be an unusually large number of reporters in the room that might find this graphic helpful.
Yes, I'll be glad to provide that for them.
Great.
I think I have an extra set here as well.
Okay, terrific.
Great.
You're welcome.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Passes unanimously. 1904, Mr. Superintendent.
Madam Chair, thank you. Item 1904 is a proposed settlement agreement between John Owens Ponds, Leon County School Board, and Rocky Hanna individually. The dollar amount is $100,000. I think it's important for you all to be reminded and for the public to know that at any given point in time, we have about 35 to 40 ongoing either cases that are being litigated or in pre-mediation phase of potential litigation. You've had items like this come to you in the past about employment decisions that were made by my staff or this board, and then a suit then entails. This is one of those cases. I also want to remind you that in the professional practices area, we have insurance. We have a $25,000 deductible when these decisions are made. In this case, it was the reappointment of the former superintendent under policy 1430. The way we interpreted the policy and the way that your board council interpreted the policy, he was not entitled to return as a principal. Moving forward, we received notification through your council that there was some pending litigation that may come from that decision. We entered into mediation, and this is a result of that mediation. The decision was made by our insurance carrier, AIG. It was not made by me or Janet Heath, our risk management coordinator. It was made by the carrier themselves. At the end of the day, we have a $25,000 deductible, and AIG would pay the remaining $75,000. That $25,000 also included in that number are our fees associated with our attorneys that represented us in this case. If the board decides not to go with this recommendation and a suit is filed, our insurance company will throw what's called the hammer clause potentially at our school system, meaning that we are on our own moving forward. And if a suit is then filed and we are found liable for some of the cause of action that would be submitted, that 100% of the liability would rest on the shoulders of the Leon County School Board. We all have personal feelings about this case, but the responsible thing to do, in my opinion, is to accept this mediated offer, to move on with our $25,000 deductible, and to put aside this case for here and evermore.
I move the superintendent's recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Jones, second by Ms. Rasmussen. Is there any discussion? Ms. Rasmussen?
Excuse me. I wanted to clarify the rationale for my intention to vote in favor of this because it was a business decision. It was just to underscore what the superintendent said. It was negotiated by our insurance carrier. It is not uncommon for businesses or governmental bodies to enter into mediated settlements to minimize exposure and cost. With our insurance company paying the $75,000, we're only paying the $25,000 deductible, which is substantially less than the demands of the original claim, the expense of litigation, the potential for damages and attorney's fees, and most importantly, perhaps, it will allow us to stay focused and not distracted from our primary mission of educating students.
Thank you.
Statement.
Ms. Bowen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This rift has been very jarring. This district has spent enormous amount of money and time in this situation. Again, this has been very distractive. Our insurance carrier company has advised us that we should settle, as this action could be seen as less expensive than some other actions if they were taken by parties in the future. And so in that regard, I have voted for this, and I am of the immediate thought need that we should move forward or move on to pay the kind of attention to the students of this district that they need and get on with the work of the district.
Anyone else? I'm not sure what to say because, as you said, we have personal feelings and then we have what our job is. And I think we said it in the last discussion, and I wrote it down. We have to make every decision as what is in the best interest of our students. And I think that this is a hard pill to swallow for all of us. I am very disappointed in Mr. Pons for bringing this forward. He and I have always had a great relationship, but I am disappointed about that. But, you know, everyone has a right to their day, and I believe it's in the best interest of our students to vote approval of your recommendation and move the district forward in the best interest of our students. Any other comment? Have a call for the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay. Next on the list is 1905. Mr. Superintendent.
Madam Chair, and on the same lines of potential litigation, we talked to you several agenda reviews ago about our situation with Baycrest and some of the folks that built Conley Elementary School. We were made aware that there was some faulty installation of the stucco on the outside of the school. We sat down and met with the players involved, Baycrest being one of them as the contract manager at risk. We had attorneys Davison and Dunlap represented Leon County School Board. We came to them with a $1.7 million fix from Davis and Dunlap. That was their recommendation. The potential cost to fix it, that would be replacing roofs and lots of other things. The other party was at about $500,000, and we've reached now at a settlement of $950,000, just short of $1 million. We're also now getting price, if you all agree to this mediated settlement, we'll begin getting prices on to get the stucco fixed at Conley Elementary School, keeping in mind that the building is 10 years old. We're disappointed that the stucco failed to begin with. That was no cause of fault of anyone involved with Leon County Schools, as far as I can tell. But I think this is the best way to proceed, would be to take this $950,000 and then to get the stucco at that elementary school fixed as quickly as possible.
Do we have a motion?
Move the superintendent's recommendation.
Second.
Been moved by Ms. Bowen, seconded by Ms. Triplin. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next is, this item has been pulled. The 1906 has been pulled. Information meetings, none to date. Superintendent's comments. Do you have any comments, Superintendent?
Did I tell you about peanut butter and jelly?
Yeah.
You did.
I'm not going there again.
Ms.
But
Bowen's our singer. And Ms.
I am excited to announce that our next meeting at the end of this month will be held at Pineview Elementary School in the cafeteria as we take this trip on the road. On the 23rd of April, we'll have one. I think we're going to try to do 4 a year, one every quarter. So we'll start at Pineview in the cafeteria and then move on to another part of our county. But in listening to Board Member Jones, I concur, I agree. Whether we have, television, not television, people want to come see this in action, they can come visit one of our schools, starting with Pineview on the 23rd.
And interestingly, that ties right into one of the Title I recommendations, which was to bring us to the people. So we can put a checkbox by that one. We've already got a plan. That's great.
May I? On that same note, I'm also excited about what Mr. Petley will do to. I think this is although it has occurred before, it has been a long time to make a major mark in this milestone moment, to take government to the people, other people, and further people to the people. And I look forward to what will be the innovative ways we make sure we get the type of community engagement that this type of activity is intended to draw.
That's great. It's going to be live streamed, isn't it? Okay, that's great. All right, so we didn't have time at our workshop today to get to continuing concerns from board members, so I would ask at this time, we had an agenda for that. So I'll just go ahead and read them. A was review of nonprofit funding for both 2018-19 and proposal for 2019-20. Ms. Striplin.
Thank you. And a lot of these, I know we talked about starting to discuss continuing concerns when we need a little follow-up, or we just haven't gotten where we being, and maybe doing that during the agenda review or during the workshop. But one of those, so you'll see I have 4 here today, and they're all follow-ups except for one, which I'll pull out C as kind of an exception there. But one of them was review of the nonprofit funding, what's currently happening, and then the proposal for 1920. I know we talked about this before, that we wish we had enough money to fund all of the great programs that go on in our schools and all the agencies that do all the great work, and we don't. A lot of entities have a set outline process for applying for funding, and we talked about going that route, and so I just wanted to see if we could get back to that conversation before the 1920 school year and see what was our intention moving forward with funding of outside entities.
Yes, I agree. And we talked a little bit about trying to involve COCA or some other groups that already have kind of a vetting process. The problem is a lot of these requests are not really related to the arts, which kind of makes it problematic. Like we had a request from the Challenger Center. At one time, we used to pay the salary of the teacher that worked at the Challenger Center, and now we don't, and they're asking for us to re-engage with them.
Sure.
We have, Peace Jam. We have the Riley House. So we'll bring those forward again, and have that conversation before we make any budget commitments to next year. And then we'll also have a budget committee that will meet and start setting priorities, just in case we do have some dollars available for the next fiscal year.
I think what would maybe to add to what you just said is, if we're going to consider any, that we announce there's a deadline to submit your request, so that we don't
That's a great
run
idea.
into the situation we ran into last year.
Right, that's a good idea.
Thing.
Yeah.
So then we have the whole package there for us to consider.
I mean, there's, if you look at what the city and the county and United Way and what they all go through as far as putting out the RFP, taking applications, doing it, I mean, it is a massive undertaking.
Right.
So we're really in a realm that I don't think we really want to be in, but if we are going to be there, which we are, then we need to have some kind of formalized process. So everybody has an opportunity to apply. And as we feel our way down this road, we talked, possibly the foundation could be involved. They already have a grant process. They already give funds. They make decisions. I don't know if we can engage that group of board members or volunteers, or if we have a committee that gets together and reviews and makes recommendations. And again, this is not hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions. That's not what this is about. This is about us having a little tiny pot that we're trying to help. I know one of them is the grandparents program. It was a wonderful program. But again, there's just so many wonderful programs that if we're going to say we have $100,000 to spend, we want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to apply. And if 4 are chosen, 4 are chosen. But at least there's some kind of process, and then we're not blindsided during the year with, hey, wait a minute, what about this group? Hey, what? Because like I said, we would want to do it all. Well, I think every school has great outside entities coming in and doing things. So I would just ask that we put something in place before the next school year. Can I go on?
Yes, please.
Okay. Sorry, I'll make it quick. I know we've been here all day. This one is just a follow-up. We talked about superintendent had allocated funds to extracurriculars to try to compensate for what parents were putting out of their pocket. And in exchange, we hope that our athletic and extracurricular programs would then reduce their fees. And I really would like some follow-up on that.
Yeah, we're working on that. Mr. Bell has sent talked to the principals and athletic directors, and he is in the process of gathering all that information. I'm sure we'll have something back to you. How about by the end of April?
That's fine. Okay, the third thing is something new, and I wanted to gather you guys' thoughts on it. I've had a couple of, obviously, with school choice opening and then closing, we had several parents that were not pleased and didn't get what they wanted, and one has kind of risen to me that might be something we want to take a look at, and it's the grandfathering. I know we talked about if a family moves and the child is going into 5th grade, they may stay. if they're going, or 4th and 5th grade for elementary, if they're going into 8th grade in their middle school and their family has, and often a move is happening, a divorce, a remarriage, your family, somebody got a new job. I mean, the child is already, there's already some kind of trauma or transition going on. Currently, our high school, our policy says you may only be grandfathered in on your senior year, and Superintendent and I spoke about, could we extend that to capture 11th and 12th graders as well? So basically, if your family is moving, you know, at some point in your sophomore year or the summer before your junior year, can you then be granted that eligibility to stay at that school? So what are y'all's thoughts on? So it's not a choice. It's not somebody moving into the, or trying to build or whatever. They've been there. The child has been there for 2 years, and for some reason the family is having to move, and now that child could be pulled to another school because of a policy we've set that you can only stay if that happens when you're going into your senior year.
I wonder what that might look like in the way of enrollment. Maybe it won't change anything at all. It won't take students from one school and put them in another. I'm just trying to see that whole picture.
Yeah, honestly, and we've talked about this. I don't think it would have that big of an impact, big picture. And her logic is they've already spent 50% of their career at one school.
Okay.
We would just be extending it to the junior year. I mean, I don't
no
have
problem with
really
that.
an issue with it.
So
I think the other question too, though, do you go 7th and 8th grade? Do you leave 6th grade by itself as a standalone? I don't think you can go wrong either way. If y'all want to go 4, 5, 7, 8, 11, 12. I mean, it's up to you all.
The least disruption to the child is, I think, what we're trying to do, and not create a problem unintended.
Yeah,
you know, so I think maybe if we do that, we should monitor it, and just to make sure it doesn't get abused. I mean, a lot of times when you create a little hole, it becomes a tunnel. So
that's right. We can't be depleting enrollments and such stuff. So I don't know.
Frequent occurrences?
I don't. I can probably get numbers, but honestly, I don't think it's going to be that much significance.
I'm just saying, if we pass it, let's just monitor it and see that it's not being abused.
Is there a way to do that this year?
Probably more in some neighborhoods than others, but go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, again, we're not talking about someone who has never been in the zone and then says, "Well, wait, I've been here for." We've made the correction. We're getting people back to their school zone. It's been a tough transition, I think, for our community, but they're there with us.
Right.
So now it is addressing these individual circumstances, which I think this is one that needs to be addressed. That when that child, I mean, I went through this. In my own family with a divorce and children. What if we have to move and we can't afford to stay here? And am I going to have to uproot my children? That would be devastating. So can we get this done in time for this next school year?
So if we get it added by the end of April, we have to advertise it. We'd have it done by June.
Board meeting, which is the May meeting for graduation. So it wouldn't be adopted until that May meeting.
But if the family if they're moving, if they're kind of in the process now and the child's a sophomore, then when they enter their junior year.
For next year.
That's what I meant for next year. Knowing that if it had board support and superintendent support, that we could at least tell those families, no, you do not have to uproot your child. We will get this.
Well, they would make application after you change the policy, if that's what you so choose to do.
And again, I can't imagine this is going to affect more than maybe 20 kids. I don't know, but.
Right.
Let's move forward with it. I don't hear any objection, and then let's have it in for a year if we pass the policy, and then look at it and see, if it's worked out the way you thought it would. Does that sound reasonable?
That'd be great. That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you. And then the last thing was mine, and it was when TAC brought it up about schools that have some capacity, and then we've all heard especially during the last week or two about the voucher expansion and them going up to families that make an income of $90,000 to $100,000, and not only pulling the 13,000 on the wait list, but going up to about 28,000. What does that look like for Leon County schools? And I had a conversation with our lobbyist about can we at least ask that there's a deadline, which of course. Not that anybody's listening to us, but some kind of deadline where the district knows that that's coming. How many kids are we actually going to lose? And then I saw a pie chart about Tallahassee classical enrollment the other day and where those students are coming from. So is that going to create some significant vacancies at some of our schools? And I think that's something that we just all kind of need to be aware of that. And if that does happen, what does that look like for us?
Is that consolidating? Is that making room for pre-K, which would be wonderful? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so it's just something I just wanted to throw out there, more kind of like an informal circumstance. I think we all need to keep that on our radar as we move into the next school year. And that's it.
Thank you.
My list. Thank you.
And Mr. Jones, you have nutrition services down.
Yes, one of the things, like many of you,
Need some WD-40 for his.
as I understand it, we are anticipating a workshop on nutrition in the very near future. Many of you, like me, have seen the recent news reports about innovative ways by which children are being served beyond school hours through nutrition programs made available through the school district. I think that's something we'd certainly be interested in doing.
Absolutely.
But also, like many things, we also discover that there's a great deal that is already occurring that we may be blithely unaware of. And so this type of workshop will provide us some insight, and then we can talk about what may be some additional incentives that we can provide to meet the needs of our children. So
Is this because of the Facebook post about
Exactly.
that? That was really cool.
It was
I'm sure everybody's seen it.
It was
I
very
sent
cool.
it to our nutrition
I did too.
service instructor.
What?
It's got a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? They'd have like little trays of leftover food turned into a meal with cellophane wrap on top of it.
That the children take home for dinner.
Take dinner home.
Instead of throwing it in the trash at the end.
Right, but it sounds great, but if
But-
like with everything else, it's
Always
not
reason.
quite that easy. There's
Yeah.
always a but. You know what I told you when I go to banquets, I usually take my little to-go thing.
Yeah, you do.
That's not street legal. When
That's true.
you're not supposed to carry food out of the civic center or out of the university club.
That's right.
So I kind of have to do
but
it on
you
the
do
slide.
do.
Yeah,
I still, but
You get the big purse, Rocky. The big
no,
purse.
that's not the point of it. The point of it is that because of
Make it
potential
plain.
liability issues and contaminated food and some of those things, we'd love to be able to do it. And I think you'd be enlightened by Mr. Howcroft coming on the 22nd, do a workshop, and to raise those questions. We don't want to throw a single thing away, but unfortunately, because of some of the
Yeah, as public
regulations, it's
stuff
hard.
And I was also delighted to discover from my conversation with Mr. Holcraft, we are offering offering suppers to a great number of our children in the evenings
And in the summers.
And in the summer.
Right, and I know for example, part of that is also what our church does every year. Bethel has a food service program that it also does through the Department of Ag. The school board does it through the Department of Health. So to find out how we can have the biggest bang for our buck, this ties back into what we talked about Title I, right? It's any child who is hungry is hard to be the best student possible. We also realize that a great number of our children who are in Title I schools come from some backgrounds, as our superintendent has described, would make him mad as hell. And so if anything that we can do to help them to be better learners, well, that's what he said. I was quoting him.
He has a second win now, right? The chocolate's kicking in.
He does.
So I think this is just a fantastic option for us to learn a whole lot more.
That's awesome. Great. Those were continuing concerns. Are there any new issues from board members tonight?
Well, no new issues, but I offer to assist Chris with making sure that as we make note of what has happened historically about moving from district to district, that does happen.
Yes. I thought you were going to talk about the lights that have been on all day and we're so hot up here.
Well, we are
But
that.
with that notice, I believe we are ready to be adjourned. So adjourned.
So move.